Now we all remember the good days of RuneScape, running around castle walls with friends, collapsing those rocks on top of each other, struggling through Vampire Slayer, even the quick-paced, unforgiving world of the wilderness. Well, turns out not much has changed as we venture into the world of Gielinor once again to test our wits against Count Draenor in the first of many expansions of RuneScape Kingdoms, Shadow of Elvarg. Whether you're an old school RuneScape player, RuneScape 3, or just have an interest in board games and RPGs, there is something for everyone in this. But let's break it down and take a look at how the game works. RuneScape the video game is quite a unique game, in which a lot of skills can be done with only one eye on the screen, no eyes, or sometimes no hands. Things can be AFK or away from keyboards, so how does that translate to a board game where you want to be very much hands-on? It handles skills and progression very well. You do still have to reach that 99, so that is still the aim, the same as the game. But it's not as much of a grind. You gain XP points for every time you take a test in each skill. There are far less skills in this. Keep gaining the XP. Every third piece you gain gives you a level. Those levels are going to make it easier to take tests as you go. So the higher you can get in certain levels, each character will have sort of something you're better at than most other people at the table. You'll pick something, maybe it's melee, maybe it's range, mage, crafting, gathering. There's so many choices. You'll sort of build your character around that and get bonuses. You'll get items that aid you. And it always feels rewarding. Ticking up that level always feels good. And the fact that you get to do it 99 times without having to grind and grind, it just naturally happens as you attempt things, is very rewarding. I think the best way they do this, however, is adding flavor. So you don't just gain a level. So if you, for example, explore Falador, there will be a sentence or two explaining your situation, and then you choose how to resolve it. So for example, the top of my head, let's say we were in Grand Exchange. You need some money to be able to buy something. So your options are sell something in the Grand Exchange or try and thieve something. So you would use thieving if you wanted to try and pickpocket someone, steal some gold, or you could use gathering or something like that to potentially be able to gather the resources via merchanting or selling. You choose different ways, you can handle things differently and they have different outcomes. It just increases the immersion for me, it just increases the interest and, like I say, makes it slightly more interesting than just leveling up. The progression of items works well too. You can upgrade your items as you go, slowly improving and never rushing too far ahead. You can play through quite a few levels in the base set alone, but this game is definitely one you're going to want expansions for, but we'll get onto those in another video. On your turn, you won't have 1,000 options, which is good. A lot of board games can have that sort of analysis paralysis where there's so many options, you don't know what to do, what the optimal choice is, and you sit there for 5-10 minutes thinking about your turn, not taking it. If there's 5 of you at a table, let's say you take 10 minutes for your turn, that's 50 minutes on one round the table. I think giving options but not being overly complicated so you can choose where you want to go, what you want to train. However, you don't have a million other smaller options once you get there. It feels very much like you're reacting to things in this game. So you'll go somewhere, you'll reveal a special event or explore there and something will happen. And you react to those rather than making those decisions yourself. So not only is it fresh and interesting every time you play it, like I say, there's not all those decisions and the things just happen to you. You're living in the world and you're experiencing it. Don't get me wrong, there is 100% going to be a best choice every turn, as there is in any game. However, this gives you the freedom to explore things. It gives you the freedom to train what stats you want. You build your character as you see. You push the escalation as you go. It all really comes down to you and you never feel punished for making a choice, even though some can lead to some very awkward boss fights. The side quests, random encounters, exploration, the vault, all of these things added for different quest lines. So as you do different quests, you add different cards to these decks. Keep the game very fresh, and I can see a lot of replayability in this one. Not only the expansions, but even just the base game again. I mean, I think it was last night we were playing Demon Slayer, and we actually failed. So towards the end, there was a couple of turns where we needed just to gather the resources and finish the quest, which would have taken like 4 or 5 turns. We were at the end of the night. I think it was almost 11 by the time we wrapped up. So we made the decision just to go to the boss and try and fight it. Obviously, skipping that many turns was a terrible decision. We didn't get all the XP we should have, and we really struggled in that boss fight and lost. Straight after that, we were talking about maybe just redo. So you meant to gain some XP and just redo the boss fight. We were talking about just redoing the quest. We had a lot of fun doing it. We trained a ton of levels. It was very interesting. So we literally just finished it and people were happy to redo it again. It's one of those things. It is just different every time. It's interesting every time. Also, a spoiler on one of the events here. So if you don't want to hear it, just skip forward. I'll leave a little time stamp down here somewhere. My favorite moment from our playthrough is the Kiss the Frog event, which one of us drew. Excitedly kissed the frog and went to draw their reward as you would expect. And this is what they were greeted with. It's silly, it's fun. There's really no reason for that to be in here if that is the reward. But it's little bits like this that you remember after the game. It creates moments in board games, which I think is one of the most important things. Those stories you tell afterwards, those moments you relive, and this was definitely one of them. As he found out the hard way, not every frog is a prince or princess. It's something the RuneScape game does very well. The comedy in there it's always been around. It's in quest lines, it's in characters you speak to. You get those silly moments that don't really make sense, but they're fun, they're funny, they're a good time. And this board game encapsulates that perfectly. There's a few other good moments, but I won't spoil any more. Just wanted to talk on that one because that's become a talking point since then. Every time we play it, it comes up. So oddly, the day after that happened, they did patch in-game to change that you didn't have to kiss the frog anymore. Now, I'm not saying that's related or anything to do with our situation, but we can only assume it was because of him, that raunchy bugger. Now, the components should never be a big selling point or the main selling point, but I do think they're important and do weigh more into other people's decisions. Obviously, you do want bang for your buck. You want, if you're going to spend this money on a board game, you do want some good components, and this definitely has that. Not only has it got beautiful miniatures, just looking at these things, finally bringing some of these characters to life from RuneScape. I love the game, but one of the things it doesn't do very well is have things to enjoy RuneScape outside of the game. So recently they've done the board game, they've done an RPG, they've done an update online, which I've just seen about a trading card game. This is definitely stuff in the right direction. It means even when you're not playing it, you can be thinking about it, playing stuff related to it, which I think is very important. And these miniatures are something this game has needed for a while. I would love to see these miniatures printed in like booster packs or something, just so we could get more characters, maybe with small parts to add to the board game. It's a massive selling point, but other than that, you get a ton of cards, you get massive decks for each quest line. The board itself is beautiful as you look around Gillinor. You get a quest board which flips over into the boss fight. There's unique cards for each boss fight and each character, and there's quests and capes and all of this other stuff. Just so many combinations of stuff you can actually play. And like I said, that is the base set alone. There is so much in the expansions. There's the King Black Dragon, the cow fight. I think there's a culinary one. There's a ton of different options, and I think no doubt we will see more, as there is plenty to explore in this game. Now, my favorite personally, and the one I'm using in our campaign, is the Mage. Ancient Magics is one of my favorite things from the game. It's just a really cool looking spell. And I remember first time using it in like Castle Wars and Soul Wars. It's iconic for me. I do think it is one of the big things that you'll remember from RuneScape. And now I get to take that from the video game to the board. In this final section, I just want to go over all the good stuff about the board game. I will touch on a few bad or negatives, but I mean, it's stretching them. They're not important things in a game. They're just very minor things that I would like changed just to make it even better. Like, honestly, I don't think most people will even notice them, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't at least mention them. Now, the negative that jumped to my mind first was during boss fights, which boss fights are done perfectly. They're a mix of luck with some tactical choices. You need to be prepared and have done the earlier game well. So you're prepared for this and ready. Your stats are high enough. You've got the correct stats to do this properly. There's looking at the initiative track and sort of making tactical decisions as you move around the board as well as attack stuff. The thing I don't like is you have an option to, I think it's called read the terrain, or there's another one. So you can basically move your teammates around the map, or you can move them one in the initiative track per success on the dice. Now, my problem here is that's your turn. That's what you do instead of attacking. So there is no good situation for it to happen. There is very niche situations. We've done Vampire Slayer and Demon Slayer now, and we've not done it once. We've not even thought about doing it. The fact that you lose your turn and attack Especially in something like Demon Slayer, where you need to quickly stun all of the mages, then attack Delriff, it can be very difficult to do. You don't really have a chance to take a turn off and do something like that. So I would maybe change it, maybe either make it a bonus action so you can do it as well as fighting, or potentially just make them more powerful. So instead of moving a teammate, you can move them and they attack, or instead of shuffling them a couple of spaces in the initiative, you can reorder the initiative however you like. Stuff like that would make it worthwhile, and it would just give you more options in these boss fights, making it slightly more tactical and improving the experience ever so slightly. But like I said, that's a very small thing. The only other thing I could say, even remotely negative, would be it can feel a little samey going through Gielinor on this board every time. Obviously, they do counteract that with having new cards shuffled into the decks every time. So what is happening is different. I don't know. It's a very very small one. Maybe if the board was reversible and you could go to different areas at different points, potentially that could be cool. And it is something we could absolutely see in expansions. Obviously, as the world expanded in RuneScape, we could see it happen in the board game as well. What I love then, I've already touched on it quite a lot here. Obviously, the theme itself, I'm a massive fan of RuneScape and medieval fantasy in general. It's such a massive part of my childhood, and it is a game I started playing again recently. The character building is very unique. The progression is very unique. There's a ton of replayability, not only in the base set, but you have expansions. The quest lines are very interesting in that they introduce new cards every quest line, so every quest feels different. Every time you do a quest line, it's going to feel different as you make different decisions. So a ton of massive positives for me. A few negatives, but I really have had to think for those. They're not something that jumped out at me and I felt like I need to say this. There is so much to love about this game. I did also see on a recent update that they're potentially talking about a RuneScape TCG having a physical copy. So if that comes out, it's something I'm going to bring to the channel. I did see an option of contacting them about using it on Tabletop Simulator. So I might be doing that and bringing that to the channel at some point. I've got a ton more Pokemon, miniature game stuff, Middle-earth strategy battle game, board games. That's all I've got for this episode though. So if you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.